we start. Do we have everyone consent to record this talk?
Certainly.
Παιδιά, είστε εντάξει να έχουμε να ηχογραφήσουμε αυτό το βίντεο?
Ναι.
Θέλετε να ανοίξετε τις κάμερες? Θέλετε να ανοίξετε τα μικρόφωνα?
Εντάξει.
Οκ.
Καταρχήν να πούμε συγχαρητήρια σε όλους. Είστε φανταστικοί. Οι ιστορίες σας ήταν υπέροχες. Νομίζω ότι δυσκολεύτηκαν πάρα πολύ να διαλέξουν τους νικητές, οπότε πρέπει να είστε σούπερ χαρούμενοι όλοι σας. Είστε? Δεν βλέπω χαμόγελα. Δεν βλέπω πανηγυρισμούς. Ναι, μπράβο. Μπορείτε να ανοίξετε όλες τις κάμερές σας, να έχετε ανοιχτά τα μικρόφωνά σας. Για τώρα να μιλήσουμε λίγο στην αρχή. Αν κάποιος θέλει να μοιραστεί κάτι μαζί μας από την εμπειρία του. Όταν θα ξεκινήσει την παρουσίαση ο κύριος Harvey, είναι να τα κλείσουμε τα μικρόφωνα για να ακούμε και μετά ανοίξτε τα για να ανθίσει ένας διάλογος γύρω από τη λογοτεχνία και τα βιβλία και όλα τα μυστικά που θέλετε να μάθετε, που να είναι μοναδικός. Κωνσταντίνα, thank you so much for the competition.
Να του πούμε μια μεγάλη καλησπέρα στα ελληνικά. 1, 2, 3.
Καλησπέρα.
This means good afternoon, Mr. Harvey.
Right, okay. Right, hello everyone.
Okay, we can start.
Okay, right. Well, thank you for inviting me to come and talk to you. Can I just say that sometimes I talk too fast. If you hear me talking too fast, just wave your hands and I'll know, and then I'll slow down a little bit, okay? Now, I've been told that you've read one of my Fiction Express books called The Thought Snatcher. Did you like it?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Like it? Did anyone like it?
So many yes.
Oh, that's good. Good. That's nice to hear. Because you can always say, if you don't like it, you can just say, no, I really don't like it. It's a bit scary asking people if they like what you've written, but it's always good to know, though. I really enjoyed writing it. I've been writing books for young people for about 20 years now. And so far I've written over 100 books, but some of them are very small books. Like
Recording in progress.
That's all right. It's got warned that you're recording the meeting. Very small books like this one, set in, I don't know if any of you can guess where this book might be set. What's the setting for this book? Anyone guess? There's a very famous building on top of a hill there. Some of you might have seen it. It's set in ancient Greece. It's all about a girl who wanted to race in the Olympic Games, and there we are. See, it's a very short story, but it's quite good fun writing short stories like that. I've done a book about Icarus as well, The Flight of Icarus. You've probably heard of Icarus, have you? Yes?
Yes.
And, yeah, and I also do non-fiction books, like this one, all about the galaxy and space, things like that. But when I normally write a book, I know how the story is going to start, and I have a good idea in my head where it might finish. But with a story like The Thought Snatcher, I didn't know where it was going to finish. Did it surprise you where the story finished when I wrote it? Was anyone surprised, or did you expect it to end the way it ended? Were you a little bit surprised, or not? Tiny bit?
I was a bit.
You was a bit surprised. Did you think it was a good ending, or do you think you could do a better one?
Yeah. It was a very good ending, I think.
Oh, right, good. Oh, good. I'm glad. I didn't know how it was going to end when I started writing it. All I knew was it was about a girl called Ellie Edison who had this device called a thought snatcher that would read people's minds, but it wouldn't do it very well. So you just get little bits of people's mind reading, which I thought might be a good idea for making it a very silly story and making a mess of things as well. Did you, I don't know if you read the story when it first went online, because when you first read it, you can vote for what happens next. Did you get to vote for what happens next? Did anyone vote for what happens next at the end of each chapter?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, because when I wrote the chapter, I didn't know how it was going to end. The readers could choose one of three options for what was going to happen. So I couldn't plan the story the way I normally plan a story. So I had to wait until everyone had decided what was going to happen before I could carry on with the story. Does anyone want to ask me anything about it or about writing stories? Is there anything you'd like to know? No? Everyone's very quiet. If there's anything at all you want to ask or you want to know about writing, just have a little think and see if there's anything at all you'd like to ask.
Where did you get your ideas from?
Where did I get my ideas? Well, the idea for this one just came from thinking about knowing what somebody had in their mind. So I thought it'd be quite good to have an invention that could read someone's mind. And the main part of the story, Ellie goes onto a television show called, I have to look what it was called now, called Chance of a Lifetime. I don't know if you've got a television program like that in Greece. We've got one called Dragon's Den. Have you heard of Dragon's Den? It's a program where people go on who've invented something and they hope that the millionaires will give them lots of money to make it even better than it is. I thought it would be quite good to have that happen in the story. So the idea was that Ellie and her granddad were going to go on this television program, but obviously something happens to granddad and he gets taken away by the millionaire bad guy. So that's where that idea came from. Some ideas just come from thinking of a character and give them a problem, making them sad or something like that. How do you get ideas for your stories? Can anyone tell me how they get ideas? What sort of things?
Yes.
No? Well, I'll show you what my stories look like when I start writing them anyway. Because I normally use my laptop, but I just get big pieces of notepaper like this and just start scribbling little words on them. You probably can't see that very well, can you? But that's what my stories look like when I first start doing them. This one's all about a pirate called Bartholomew Roberts. But that's how it all starts off, just lots and lots of bits of paper. And the story just starts building up in your head until you're ready to write it. Would anyone like to tell me how they ended their story? Because you've written a chapter, haven't you, to end the story? Would anyone like to tell me how theirs ends? Because mine ends with James Rixton shooting his old-fashioned gun in the air, and it makes a big light shade fall down on his head, doesn't it? And he gets trapped. What sort of thing did you have in your story? Any of you remember?
Ελάτε, παιδιά, οι νικητές του δεύτερου επίπεδου να απαντήσουν και μετά θα κάνουμε πιο γενική κουβέντα για τη συγγραφή. Ποιοι συμμετείχαν στο δεύτερο επίπεδο? Εύα?
Κύριε, εγώ όχι.
Όχι.
Βασικά δεν θυμάμαι καν. Εγώ έγραψα τον πυροβόληση.
Εύα, ήσουνα στο πρώτο, αγάπη μου.
Εμείς
είχαμε νικητή στο πρώτο και στο τρίτο.
Εσύ, Ναταλιά. So, Mr. Harvey, we don't have a winner from the second level. Would you like to make general questions? To tell us, for example, when did you first realize you wanted to become a writer?
Right. Well, when I was little, my mum used to read lots of books to me. Things like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Flat Stanley and Where the Wild Things Are, things like that. So you might have heard of some of those books yourself. Have you heard of any of those? Probably have, yeah. You get them all around the world. And I started to love stories. Then as I grew older, I thought I'd have a go myself at writing them. And I thought it might be easier writing little books for very young readers. But that was a mistake. It isn't really easier. But I just love doing it. So that's really what got me started. I just wanted to write stories because I have lots of strange ideas in my head. And I thought, if I don't do something with these strange ideas, I don't know what I'd end up doing. And it's also better than having another job, having to work really hard. I have had a few other jobs. I've worked in a shop, which was really boring. And I used to teach people to swim, which is great, but you end up going all wrinkly. So all I do now is write stories and visit schools. So that's really how I started. I think I wrote 2 or 3 stories and sent them to the publishers, and they didn't like them at first, but I just kept on going and kept on going. And eventually someone said, yes, we love this. And they made it into a book. Since then, I've just not stopped. So I write stories for people of all ages, and I visit schools and talk about writing and read poems and show how a book gets made. It's not quite as easy to do it, though, in front of a camera, because normally I leap around a lot. And if I did that, you wouldn't be able to see me and you wouldn't be able to hear me. And so it's a bit strange just sitting here like this trying to tell you about it. But so some of the stories that do very little, I can't really even show you, can I? Because I don't think you can see them very well. I mean, this one's a very silly little story about a wolf wanting to eat a chicken, and it tries to trick the chicken to come up to his house. And yeah, it's a very, very, very silly story, a bit like a cartoon. You know, when you watch cartoons and silly things happen. I like lots of funny things in my stories. So even with something scary, a bit like The Thought Snatcher, which could be a bit scary with the bad guy, Lazarus Levelo. He's quite a creepy character, I thought, but there's still funny things happening in the story. So I like to have lots of funny things in the stories. What else can I tell you? Normally, I usually read lots of stories as well. As well as making stories up, I like writing about real people, like this guy, Christopher Columbus. Now, you've probably heard of Christopher Columbus. But I love writing this because when I was little, I had a big book that when you opened it, it popped up. So you had a big sailing ship in the middle, and it was a bit like a pirate ship. And that got me interested in real people from history. So I wrote about Christopher Columbus and Neil Armstrong, and I've written about painters and explorers and things like that. So I try to write as many different sorts of books as I can. Anything else anyone would like to say or ask me?
What inspires you to write a book?
Which one? The Thought Snatcher one, the one that you had to read? Or any book? One thing that inspires me is that if I don't write a book, I'll have to get another job. So if I write a book, I get paid for it. So that's quite a good way of being inspired to write something. That probably sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? But it does sort of encourage you to write things if you know that if you keep on writing them and you enjoy it, that can be your job and that's all you have to do. So that's one thing. And sometimes people ask me to write about something, like with the Thought Snatcher one, I was asked to write a book for you guys to read. So that sort of helped inspire me in a way to write something. Do you enjoy writing?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh,
yes, very much.
Oh, good. Some people really don't like it. I know there's only me and my family that write stories. I don't think any of the others would like to. My wife works in a library, so she tells stories to people, and she helps. Sometimes she gets ideas, and she says she helps me a bit sometimes. I had to say that because she's just in the other room listening. So, but sometimes she can help a bit. But it's a strange job because you have to do it really all on your own. So if you like being on your own and talking to yourself, it's a really good job. But if you like working with other people, it's probably not the best thing to do. But I do get to go and visit schools and talk to lots of people and have a laugh there, talking about stories and doing silly things. So that's good. Yeah. So anything else from anyone?
I see you have written a lot of books that has something to do with Greece. Have you ever visited Greece?
I've not, no. I was asked that before, but no, I would love to go, but I've not been yet. I think one of the reasons is because there's lots of fantastic Greek myths, you know, about Hercules and about the wooden horse of Troy, the Trojan War, and Achilles and things like that. And I think they're really interesting stories. Do you hear those stories quite a lot?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you get fed up with them as well? Because I really like them. When I was at school, I never heard those stories, or not many of them. So when I've read them since leaving school a long time ago, you know, I find them really interesting, and I like the way they all sort of join together. And there's some things I can use in those stories and put them in a story for young people to read, but there's some things that are quite nasty and horrible in the stories that I can't really write about because I don't think people would want me to write about some things for children or for young readers. I can't even tell you what the things are because some are just too horrible. But yes, I have written quite a few Greek myths, so I quite enjoy those. I would love to come there and visit because I think it helps give you food for your imagination if you go somewhere. where I live in Wales, there's lots and lots of castles. There's probably more castles in Wales than there is in any other country. Every little town and village has got a castle. Some of them are just piles of stones now, but there's lots of really big castles. So that gives you sort of thoughts in your head to help you write stories. Unfortunately, you do have to go out and see things and meet people and talk to people to discover things. If I just sit at home watching television or playing on an Xbox, it probably won't give me many ideas for a story. So it's good to get out of your house sometimes and go and see other things, which gives you ideas. I don't always write about Greek stories, though. There's a little story here. This is called Steph and the Sea Sprite, and it's about waste, people throwing plastic bottles in the sea and things like that. And this sea sprite comes up and takes the little girl forward in time to show her what the world would be like if she carries on, or if people carry on throwing things into the sea. And then they go further forward in time each chapter. It's a bit like a story called The Christmas Carol, which you might have heard of, with a man called Ebenezer Scrooge, and he 3 ghosts visit him. You might have heard of that, have you? Or you might not have done, I don't know. Yes, it's a bit like that in a way. So sometimes I steal or borrow little bits of other people's stories, and that's a good way of getting ideas as well. If there's something in a story you really like, you might want to write a story about a wizard or a boy going to a wizard school. There's already a book, of course, about a boy going to a school to be a wizard. You might have heard of him, called Harry. Can't remember his other name now. You remember his name? Harry Potter. That's it. Yeah. So you can write about things that are already in other books, as long as you change them and make it your own. It's good fun doing that sometimes. Anybody else got anything at all they'd like to ask?
Have you ever written a book about football?
No, I get asked that quite a lot. I did a poem about football once, but I can't remember it. It was one of the first poems I ever did, but I've not actually written a book about football. I think it's quite a hard thing to write about. I've got some friends who write about football. Do you like football?
Yes.
Very much.
Very much. Well, I shouldn't really ask, but what team do you support? I'm just interested.
Hulk.
Yeah.
Hug forever.
Yeah.
Who was that? Say it again.
England, I like Manchester City very much.
Nice. We've got a little boy. He's not very little, but he supports Manchester United. Yeah, it's one thing I'm not allowed to talk about in school because people start arguing about it.
Manchester United is dead those days.
My dad likes Manchester United.
Yeah. It does make people argue, especially if I go to Manchester, where some people support one team and some support another, or if you go to Spain and some people support Barcelona and some people support AC Milan, and people start arguing about it.
Liverpool.
Liverpool, yeah. Well, I live quite near Liverpool, so it doesn't take me long to go to Liverpool. I have to go underneath the river, under a tunnel, and yeah, people talk about football a lot there as well. But I don't really like it that much, really. I used to like playing it, but I don't really like watching it. So I find it hard to write about it because you just end up writing about people kicking the ball to each other. I did think of a story with a boy not being able to play football very well, but then he finds an old pair of football boots, and maybe they belong to a really famous player. When he puts them on, it's like they're magical boots. So I thought that could be quite good, a pair of magical boots. But then at the end, he finds out the boots aren't magical at all. They just gave him confidence to play. But I didn't know if it was very interesting or not, or it might be a bit boring. I wasn't really sure. But so no, I've not done a football book, but I could have robots playing football. That might be exciting. Anybody else got a question at all?
When did you start writing books?
Oh, I started. What years? I've been doing it for about 20 years. So that's when I started, about 20 years ago. But then I had another job as well, so I had to do my other boring job, and then I went home and did writing. Now all I do now is writing, which I know sounds really boring to some people, but I love it. It's great, to make things up and not have to go out to work. So, it sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? It is a job, though, and it can be worrying because you don't know if you're going to get paid. You can spend months and months writing a story and nobody might like it. So that's a bit scary sometimes. Anybody else?
How long did it take you to write the book?
Oh, say it again.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Oh, how long did it take? Well, the one you read, The Thought Snatcher, I had to write one chapter in 2 days. So I had to write it pretty quick because I had to think about what was going to happen. And then after I'd written it, people read it and they said what they wanted to happen next. And then I had 2 more days to write the next chapter. So The Thought Snatcher took me 5 weeks, but it was only 2 days for each chapter. So that's very quick, really. And it's a little bit scary as well, because I've got to get it finished at a certain time. But with other books, it might take a month or 2 months, or it might take more than a year. I've been doing a very big book about a pirate, and I've been doing it for about 2 years. I really need to get it finished. But I've got a very bad habit. There's some things that I do that you really shouldn't do if you're a writer. So I get an idea for a story, and I start writing. And then I get an idea for another story. So I leave that one alone and start writing a new story. And then I get another idea, and I start another new story. Does that sound like a good idea to you? The problem is, yes. I have lots of stories I'm doing, but they don't always get finished. And that makes my wife very cross. Yeah.
So guys, start writing your own book and we will publish it during the summer.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. Some writers work together. I don't know if you've tried working together, but I find that really hard. Sometimes I write something and someone can suggest something for me to do, and that's all right. But sometimes people suggest things and I think, I don't really like that, because all the ideas are in your head. So it's good if you can do it all yourself. But sometimes it's useful if people suggest things. That's one of the strange things about Fiction Express. The readers suggest what they would like to happen next in the story. So I get to put little things in the story. Now, when I wrote the...
May I ask something?
Is that something?
Which was the title of the first book that you have written?
The very first one was called An Itch to Scratch. You know, when you have an itch and you scratch it. It was all about a big gorilla, a big hairy gorilla who had an itch and he couldn't reach it. And all the animals told him to try different things. I think a warthog told him to roll in the mud because that's good for a warthog. And different animals said different things, but nothing worked. And then when he got back home, he flopped on his bed and the little baby gorilla jumped on his back and scratched his back. And that got rid of the itch. So it's a very nice, cute story for people who were about 4 years old or something like that. So it's quite a nice little gentle story. So that was the very first one I did. Yeah. But since then, I've just kept on going, keep writing more and more stories. So it's really good fun, though. It's quite exciting when the postman brings a brand new book through the post and you have a look at it and you go, wow, that's a brand new book. And I still feel really excited when that happens. I need to get out more, I think. Anybody else?
What was your favorite book when you were a child?
When I was a child, I think it was a book called Flat Stanley. Do you know Flat Stanley? I tried to find it before. It's about a little boy who goes to bed and a big board, like a notice board, falls on him and flattens him. So he's like a piece of paper. And they fly him like a kite and they post him in a mailbox. And so I think that was my favourite story when I was very little. But I had lots of other favourites as well. But have you got a favourite story?
No, I don't.
No? It's a hard one to answer, really, isn't it? Because there's so many good stories. If you like them, they're all your favourites sometimes, and it's hard to pick one, isn't it? Anybody else want to ask anything or say anything?
What inspired you to write The Thought Snatcher?
What inspired me to write it? With Fiction Express, they asked me to write usually two stories every year. So I have to come up with a new idea twice a year. I'm doing another one in September, I think. I think it's September. I can't remember what it's about now. I've forgotten, which is a bit strange. But I wanted something mysterious and a little bit scary and a little bit funny. I thought it'd be quite good to have a part of the story where they're running through the sewers, the drains underneath the city, because the little girl, Ellie, she's very embarrassed about her father, isn't she? Because he works in the drains and she doesn't think it's a very good job to do. But I thought it'd be quite good if they can go and explore under the city in the drains. But by the time I got to the end of that book, I didn't have time to fit it in. I also wanted to have a time travel thing in the story. because the granddad's made a time travel machine where you can go back in time for 20 seconds. I thought that could be quite exciting in the story, but I couldn't squeeze it into the book, because sometimes with a book you can write as many words as you want, so you can make it really big. But with the Fiction Express ones, I can only use so many words, so I have to be very careful what I have in the story so I can make it all fit in. It's a tricky thing to do. Did anyone have a really different ending for theirs? I know I'm going to read some of them soon. I've not read any of them yet, but I'm looking forward to reading them, if that's all right with you. Do you like people reading what you've written? Or is it a bit horrible?
I'm not sure, really. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Sometimes when I go into school and I work with people and get them to write things, and sometimes everyone wants to stand up and read what they've done. But there's always a few people who don't want to. And I know how they feel, because when I write a new story, I sometimes go into a school and say, I'm going to read my new story to you, and I read it, and you just hope everyone likes it, because if everyone's just sat there looking around, being very bored and fed up, you think, oh no, it's not very good. So you don't know what people are going to think. But I think that the important thing with the story is that you write it so that you can then share it with everyone. Because if you write it and just keep it to yourself, no one will ever know what it's about. So it's a good thing to do, to share it. But it does make you a bit scared, doesn't it? I think you feel a bit, I don't know what you would say, a bit nervous, and your heart starts beating like that, and you think, oh no, I don't want to read it, I don't want to read it. But then afterwards, you feel good about it, I think. Can you remember what happened at the end of the chapter that you wrote? Did you have a different ending to me?
I wrote, I think, for another book.
Oh, right.
The one we're talking for right now, so.
Oh, right, you're doing it now. Oh, good, good. Are you enjoying doing it? Yeah, oh, good, good, excellent. Does anybody else want to ask anything or say anything?
Yes. Does writing make you feel better?
Does it make me feel better? Yeah, I think so, yes. If I don't do any writing, it doesn't feel very good. So if I'm writing something, yeah, it does make me feel better, I think, yes. Because if I'm not writing it, I worry about it. I think, oh no, I'm not writing anything. And you worry that maybe you can't do it anymore. So yeah, so when I start writing something, it does make me feel better.
May I ask something?
Yes, yes.
When are you going to publish your next book?
Well, I think the next one is going to be the new one for Fiction Express. I think it's going to be in September. So you might read it then, I don't know. But I can't remember what it's about. I told them what it's going to be about, but I've forgotten. That sounds really silly, doesn't it? In fact, I even had to read The Thought Snatcher just before I started talking to you, because I couldn't remember all the characters' names, which sounds really silly, but because I write lots of stories, sometimes you end up forgetting about them. And sometimes you read something, you think, oh, that's really good, I forgot about that. And sometimes you read something and you think, oh dear, that's not really good at all. So it surprises you. But yes, I'm not sure when the next one's coming out, because it's been a bit strange over the last year, hasn't it? People haven't been going out to work the same, so I've not been able to write as many new books as I normally do. I am working on 4 little books, but I can't really tell you about them, or I shouldn't do. I probably might get in trouble if I tell you about them. It's about some children helping to save the world, and they work for a special secret organisation. And I've just started working on the first book now. That's quite exciting, because they'll be coming out maybe next year, I think. So if I write one now, hopefully it comes out next year. Sometimes it takes quite a long time for them to get made into books. Anybody else?
Have you ever wrote a scary book? Scary story?
I did a little scary one, but you wouldn't find it very scary, because it was for younger people, so they found it a bit scary. I've got nothing here. Scary. Oh no. Yeah, there's monsters in this book, you know, but it's not really scary, is it? You can tell it's not going to be scary, but I do like the picture of the scary house. There's a little girl who's gone up to the house, and she's going to babysit for these scary monsters. But it's a silly story, you know, and the characters are quite silly as well. Yeah. So that's not really scary. But I've got an idea for a scary one, but It's just getting it right, really. And also, I've got other books I need to finish. Otherwise, my wife will be very cross with me if I start another new book. So, well, yeah. Do you like scary stories then? Are they your favourite sort of stories, scary ones?
Yes.
Yeah. What sort of things do you like reading then?
I like spooky houses.
Yeah, good. It's good having spooky houses and things. Some people love scary things because they want someone getting chopped up with an axe and lots of blood and horrible things like that. But that's not always very scary. The scary thing is when everything's all quiet and then suddenly something goes boo and makes you jump. And that's a scary bit, I think, isn't it? So if you can write something like that that makes you sort of hold your breath as you're reading it, that's really good and exciting. Anybody else?
Can I ask, did you write about a real story?
Oh, say it again, please.
Did you write about a real story?
What? I can't quite get that. What? It's people in history, did you say? Can you say it one more time? Is that Nikki?
Yes. Did you write about a real story?
I can't quite hear what you're saying.
If you have written a book that has a real story in it.
Oh, right. Okay, a real story. Well, there are some real things in stories. Oh, right. Yeah, I have one here. If I find it. Well, okay, there's one here. This is a real story. It's about a king called Alfred the Great. You might not have heard about him, but he fought against the Vikings. So all the things in this story are real, but I made it into a story and put extra people in it. So there's a little boy in the story who probably didn't really exist, but the king and the Vikings and the things that happened, they're all real. So sometimes you can get real things and put them in a story. I have a time travel story about a ship called the Titanic, which you might have heard of.
Yes, Titanic.
Yeah? Titanic is a so good movie. I like this.
Oh yes, and there's a movie as well. Yes, where you have to stand like that and you sing that song. Yes, I won't sing though. Don't worry. But I've been doing lots of research about the Titanic because I thought it'd be quite good to have a story where a boy and his uncle travel back in time to do something and they find themselves on the Titanic. It'd be a bit scary, wouldn't it? Because you know that the boat's going to sink, so you have to do whatever you're doing and then get off before it sinks. So I thought that'd be quite good, having real things from history with made-up things as well. And also the story, a big book about a pirate I'm doing, there's lots of real things in there, but there's also made-up things to make it more of a story instead of just a history book. That's a quite good thing you can do. You can get things from history and make it into a story. Yes?
How do you feel when you write a story?
How do I feel when I write a story? Sometimes I feel like banging my head. But that doesn't help because in fact it makes your hair fall out, so that's not a good idea. So don't bang your head too much. But when you get something right, you think, yes, that feels really good because it's exciting because you know the reader's going to read it and they might be surprised. So that feels really good. So sometimes it feels really good. Sometimes it makes you cross. Yes. But it really, because I enjoy doing it, it's all right. So it's good fun.
Do you have a favorite character?
Oh, I don't know. I think when I'm writing a story, usually one of the characters in that book is my favorite. They become my new favorite character because they're in my life. It's almost like they're a real person, you know. Like when I wrote The Thought Snatcher, Ellie Edison, I wasn't sure she was the main character, but I didn't really like her very much. I don't know if you liked her, because I know some readers, they didn't like her because she wasn't very nice about her mum and dad, and she wasn't very nice about her brother. But I think at the end, she was quite nice. But in that story, I think Tim, the brother, was my favourite character. Or sometimes horrible characters are my favourites. Like there's the man who seems horrible. It's called Lazarus Malevolo. He seems like a horrible, scary man, but really he's very nice. So I quite liked him as well. But sometimes it's the horrible characters, like in Harry Potter. My favourite character would be Professor Snape, because he seems really...
Harry Potter.
I love Harry Potter.
Some people hate it, don't they?
My cousin loves Harry Potter.
Loves Hagrid, he said. Loves Hagrid. Yes, some people do. What do you like? Is there anything you really like? Any sort of stories you really like?
I like Titanic, the real story.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Okay. Anybody else got anything they'd like to say?
Yes. Do you need a lot of time to concentrate before you start writing a story?
Yes, sometimes you do. Some writers know everything that's going to happen in their stories. When I first started, I read books about how to write stories, and it said that some writers write everything down that's going to happen, and I don't always know what's going to happen. And because I thought that's what you had to do, it stopped me from writing. So once I know a little bit, I start writing things, and I don't always know what's going to happen next. And it's quite interesting to see where the story goes. Sometimes I get stuck and I have to go back and change things. Especially with the Fiction Express stories, I don't really know what's going to happen. So I know how it's going to start, and then because the readers suggest or say what they want to happen next, and I try to fit their ideas in, it's not always easy. So I can't always plan where the story is going to go. It's good if you know where it's going. It's like going on a journey. You know, you start at the beginning and you hopefully know where it's going to end, but you don't know what's going to happen in the middle. That's the exciting stuff, all the little bits in the middle. But it does help if you know where it's going at the end. But I don't always know. So I don't always do a lot of planning. I never used to when I was at school. I wonder, do your teachers tell you to plan your stories? Yeah, I know. Sometimes, yeah. When I was at school, we were always told to plan our story, but I never really knew how to plan it. I didn't know what to do. So I start with something that I know in the story. It might be the beginning, or it might be halfway through. It might be a little conversation with two characters. And if I start writing it, it starts growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger. If I just sit there and stare at my piece of paper or stare at my screen, waiting for the first word of the book, it doesn't always work. So I always start with something I know. And that's a good way to get going with your story. So if you're stuck, don't sit there thinking, oh, I don't know what to do. Just write anything and see what happens. It's interesting what comes out sometimes. Okay, anybody else?
What advice do you have for writers?
Oh, so can you say that again, please?
What advice do you have for writers?
What advice? Right. Well, it's probably sounds boring, this, but the best advice is to read lots of things, not just the things you love. Like you might love stories about little kittens and unicorns. I know you probably don't. So it's good if you read things you like and some things that aren't your favourite things. But the other advice is to just write. You know, if you do a bit of writing every single day, it helps. It makes it easier for you. At first, it's really hard. But if you do a little bit every day, it gets easier. Your brain it's like doing exercises. Your brain gets fitter and it gets used to you wanting to write words. So that's really the best advice, is just to sit down and write. A lot of people say they want to write a story, but instead of writing a story, they watch television or something like that. So that doesn't really help. So you have to have a bit of time every day where you just sit and write something. So that's I think is the best advice. If you're already writing things, my next bit of advice is to read things out loud. So when you've written it down, read it out so you can hear what it sounds like. You don't have to read it to anybody else. You can just read it to yourself. So I think the people who live in the house next to us probably think I'm very strange, because sometimes I sit here at the table and I've got the doors open and they can hear me reading things out loud, putting on silly voices. So they must wonder really what I'm doing, because they don't know what I do. But hey, I don't care.
So as you understand, we have new future writers with us.
Oh, right.
Today.
Oh, right. Oh, good.
So would you like to ask him where we can find him? Probably in the Fiction Express forum.
Oh, yes. Well, if you go on the Fiction Express forum, that's on, I don't know how long you've been using Fiction Express, but the forum is live when a book is live. So as I write it, I'll be on the forum. So have you been with Fiction Express for quite a while, or is it a new thing for you?
They have access until the end of the school year.
Oh, right. Well, so you're reading a book now then, I suppose, aren't you? Because I think there's a book now. Yes, there's three books every few months.
There's a live book.
You can talk to the author and ask questions and things. Some of the authors talk more than others. I try to answer everything I can, but as it gets bigger and bigger, it becomes harder. The first one I did, it was quite easy, but now there's a lot of readers in lots of different countries. So it takes a long time answering everyone's things. But, it's always interesting hearing what people think. A lot of readers got cross about the little girl not liking what her mum and dad did, and they thought she was very rude, and so I sort of changed little bits to make it a bit nicer. But it's very interesting and very different hearing what people say as you're writing something. It's a little bit scary as well sometimes.
Yes.
But yes,
So,
when I'm on the forum, you can always talk to me if you're still on next time I write a book. Sorry.
So we will be waiting your new story.
All right.
September.
It's great. If anyone wants to ask me questions afterwards, you can send me emails, because I have a website with my email address on, and people can email me if they want to. So I'm always happy to hear from people, and I'll answer back, because sometimes people get ideas for questions after this is all finished. I know when I leave a school, I get lots of emails because they didn't want to ask because people were listening or they suddenly thought of something. So, yeah. But it'd be great to hear from you all.
I would like just to make a comment regarding the forum. The fact that the authors themselves spent time to respond to the students gives them an amazing opportunity to get more engaged.
Yes.
They really like that. And they really appreciate the fact that they are giving comments and some feedback on what they write.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's great that you also spend time to do that, because I know it's very time consuming to...
It can be, yes. Yeah. Sometimes it's very time, because you think, I've just spent 2 hours answering, and then there's more coming through all the time. So it is hard. I like to try and answer at least once for every person. But some people chat a lot more than others, so it is hard keeping up sometimes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. However, there are students coming and they comment on that the author has responded to what I said.
Yeah. I know some do more than others. I certainly do as much as I can, but I suppose it depends how busy the author is doing other things as well. So I think if the forum's there, really, the author should be chatting and communicating, and it's an important part of it.
And the fact that it might be the only chance they will have in their life to talk to the author himself that is writing a book that they are reading.
Yeah, that's it. It's a very unique thing. I know I try to get the readers to suggest what they would like. Sometimes give a character a name or things like that, and they get to put interesting things in the stories then. But, it's great.
Perhaps you can get inspired yourself with the comments they make.
Oh, yes. Definitely, yeah. Sometimes it's hard fitting things in. Sometimes people want something in the story and you think, I can't do that, I can't get that in. But that's all part of the fun.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of our students, I would like to thank you a lot. For us, it was the first year on Fiction Express, and it has been a great opportunity to make our students read. They read a lot, and they really like that.
Oh, great. It's good to hear that. Really good. Fantastic. Hopefully you'll stay with it and I'll hear from you all again in the future.
Yeah. We will do.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It's been great talking to you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. This has been good. Yeah, it's been good fun. I know it's always hard at first because nobody wants to talk, but once everyone relaxes a bit, it's great when everyone talks. Yeah, it's great. Good fun. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your fantastic questions.
Have a nice summer. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε όλους, παιδιά. Είστε φανταστικοί όλοι.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.